Today we are discussing a topic I know nothing about. Maureen is here. Let's begin.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Today's topic is neurodiversity affecting your finances? Now, before we start, 2 points. First, neither Maureen or I are neurodivergence experts, but we do have credible sources that show that individuals with ADHD, autism, and other neurodiversity need additional support for common financial struggles. Second, all of the budgeting and other tips that we're going to be discussing today are helpful to everyone. So if you're struggling with budgeting or setting a budget, whether you're diagnosed as neurodivergent or not, we will have lots of helpful tips for you. Our focus today will be on sharing practical strategies to create financial systems that will work for everyone. So with that background, let's get started. Maureen, welcome back. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me back.
So Maureen has been without a voice for like the last 2 or 3 weeks or something. It's gradually coming back. So we're gonna hope she can get through half an hour. I'm sure I'll be hitting the mute button many times as we cough. Okay, so let us start off with some definitions. You start wherever you want. What are we talking about? What is neurodiversity? Give me the layman's explanation of what this is all about.
Right. So first, I'll just mention neurotypical. So neurotypical brains are brains that process information in an expected pattern. And it's a pattern for how they think, interacting with others, and communication. So a neurodivergent brain is a brain that has natural variations to these inputs. So neurodivergent people will have differences in how they process sensations, like input, like how you see, hear, all of those, the sensory processing. There's differences in attention regulation, so how well focus can happen, social communication, picking up on social cues, that kind of thing, and also cognitive processing styles, so the way we think. So not everyone learns the same way.
So can you give me an example of what you're talking about, like a practical
So
thing?
An example that made sense to me, I would be classified as neurodivergent. And an example that made sense to me is like if you take a group of people who are all going to work. Some are going to drive, some will take the bus, some are going to walk, some are going to run or Uber. All of them get to work, but some of them needed the guidance of someone else or another tool to get there. They needed more exertion on their part to get there, or they just needed more time to get there. But they all got there.
Gotcha. So, I mean, is this a real thing? How many people are affected by this?
Well, there's about 15 to 20% of the world's population that's been diagnosed as neurodivergent, but there's another 20% of people who feel like they're undiagnosed neurodivergence. Okay,
so it's a significant thing. And why are we talking about this on a money show?
Well, because although neurodivergent individuals are really creative, big picture, out of the box thinkers, they can struggle with budgeting, complex financial products, and managing their impulse control related to spending.
So are there, I don't need you to give me any actual names, but are there like any like really famous people who have done really famous things that would be in this category?
I would assume so. Sorry.
I like to make up questions that aren't on the script. So, and what would
have to be a lot of neurodivergent famous people. Of course, nothing comes to mind.
And what would that person be like then? So, like, I understand, there are some people whose brains are wired differently and they're really good at math, for example.
Right. Like Albert Einstein. And there are other people who are wired differently, so their brains are not at all good at math. There are other people who are wired so their brains are very creative. And, right.
When you're describing the different paths here, that's what pops into my head, that, okay, some people take this path, some people take that path. Well, the people who are taking the different paths, they're probably going to see a bunch of different stuff and going to come to a bunch of different conclusions. So from that point of view, it's a big advantage. As opposed to, someone like me, I'm an accountant. I go from A to B to C to D, And, the ledger is always the same. It's like a blockchain. You got to attach the next block to the next. So it seems to me like you can go down different paths and actually see different things. So, okay. So what does the word executive dysfunction mean? And what does that mean? How does that relate to what we're talking about here?
So executive function would be the ability to control motivation, planning, working memory, organization, self-control. So executive dysfunction is when all of these tasks, or some or all of these tasks, become more difficult. Gotcha.
So, okay, so let's, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things we need to talk about, but I would like to just go right to the practical advice section here, because everything we're talking about, and again, I'm not a scientist here, but if I had to speculate, I would speculate that this is not an A or B thing. It's more of a spectrum.
Absolutely.
Meaning,
and everyone's on a spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. So,
point of a spectrum. Yeah.
So you talk about, okay, some people when they go to work, they go this way. Some people, well, okay, nobody does it, boom, straight, A to B. We all have there's a bit of divergence. It's just a question of some people are more than others. So this concept of executive dysfunction, what can someone practically do to address that issue? Like, let's go practical then. So, I mean, you talked about, decision fatigue or something. So tell me some practical things that someone can do to deal with that.
Right. Because we don't always want to rely on a stress mode, right? We don't always want to rely on last minute things, because that can become very tiring. So other techniques would be to reduce the decision fatigue. So like automate everything, right? Or at least your bills, so that you have a set and forget. We've talked about that on other podcasts. It's a very good technique to help with that.
And that's something I tell everybody. I didn't think that was a neurodivergent thing. I just thought that, well, it makes your life easier. So I had this exact discussion with somebody yesterday, doing a counseling session with them. And I said, okay, so you got a phone bill once a month, then you have to pay it on the 23rd or something, but you get paid bi-weekly, which is never on the 23rd. So why don't you just every payday, your phone bill's $100, just send them $50 every payday. And in fact, you can go in and automate it so that every payday you send them $50. And they go, that'd be way easier. So, and that's what you're saying, set it and forget it. So you don't have to think about it. You just do it. And so to me, that helps everybody, but you're saying what it's also doing is eliminating the need to make a decision about when I'm paying that bill. And therefore I'm reducing decision fatigue.
Right.
Okay. So I did not realize I was helping people on that level. So that's cool.
Other decision reducing decision fatigue would be like keeping a simple spending rule. Like, I'm only going to spend from my debit card, never from my credit card, or I'm going to check my budget or balance before spending on non-essentials. So you can create a little rule that you just always follow. And then that reduces the fatigue as well. Should I buy this? Should I not buy this?
So the idea is, don't think about it. Think about it once.
Right.
Come up with the plan, set it and forget it. Off you go. Okay.
Right.
So now I know you're a big fan of budgeting, and I'm not so big a fan of budgeting, but whatever. So how does budgeting fit into any of this? Is budgeting kind of like what you're saying? Well, it's a rule that you can follow, or is there some other spin to it than that?
Right. Well, you can, there's the different styles of budgeting, which we had talked about before. So, but you do want to try to make budgeting a low effort habit, right? You want to do things so that you're, you have two categories, like essentials, non-essentials, right? Just make it very easy to budget. If you find budgeting hard, you can pair it with another routine, right? That's a common technique for someone who's neurodivergent. You do stacking. So while I'm drinking coffee, I'm going to check my budget.
Let's have a toast to coffee while we're just sitting here then. Okay. There you go.
Okay.
We both have our Hoyes Michaelis debt-free and 30 mugs. So, okay.
Right.
So
mine has lipstick though.
Oh yeah. I fortunately do not have lipstick on mine, because I washed it off before I got here. So I don't understand the whole stacking concept then. So what you're saying is, okay, well, every morning I have my coffee and that's just something I do. I think pretty much everyone watching us does the same thing. So what you're saying is, hey, since you're having your coffee anyways, that would be a good opportunity to, look at your app and see what's due today or what your balance is or something like that. Is that the concept you're talking about? Okay. And okay, tell me some other things that make the whole process low effort then. How else do you cheat? That's really what I'm asking. How do you cheat?
Right. So setting up reminders using alarms, sticky notes, phone widgets, just to remind you. So if you're not doing the automated process, because sometimes that doesn't work for people, you want to have an alarm, a reminder. Oh, hey, the bill's due tomorrow, right? So they're just things like that. And time blindness is an issue for some people with neurodivergence, right? So even if you've done a task before, you still have time blindness. It's like, oh, that's going to take forever. Or, it's only going to take 2 seconds and it takes you an hour. So there's a time blindness factor. So just saying, okay, you know what? I'll just do this for 5 minutes. That's it. All I have to do is 5 minutes and then I'm done. So you want to make sure that you're doing it, but you're setting it up in a way that it doesn't feel overwhelming.
Yeah. If you haven't filed your taxes for the last 10 years, then it's going to be pretty overwhelming getting caught up. Whereas if you're a self-employed person and at the end of every day, you just put your receipts in a folder on your computer or on your desk or something, that's way easier. So, okay. So I get the whole time blindness thing. Give me some more practical stuff then here. What else can someone do?
Use visual and physical tools. So you want to, color coding. You'll see probably a lot of neurodivergent people love color coding. So color code, do that. You want to use a financial mind map instead of a spreadsheet, because sometimes the spreadsheets are quite restrictive for how we think. So a mind map works better. So you have a category in the middle and then you have, spikes coming out of the center and you're just kind of writing down. I mean, there's different ways to do a mind map, but you're doing it in a very visual way.
So is a mind map...
Canva will help you do a mind map.
So is a mind map a replacement for budgeting or is it a adjunct to it or what is it?
It's different. Instead of doing like pen and paper accounting style or doing a spreadsheet, you're doing it in a graph or a pie chart, so you're doing it very visually. So you're still budgeting. You're just putting it down in a different way.
So I'd have in the middle of this mind map, okay, I got $2,000 this month. Is that?
Yeah.
And then, okay, so I got groceries over here. I got this over here. I got, okay, I see. So, and that's just a different way to look at things, but it's a visual way to look at things. And so to me, that sounds way harder, but that's probably because I'm an accountant.
Right.
Why does that make it easier? It's just because that's the way your brain works. It goes, I see. Okay. So you got to map it to the way your brain works. Well, and again, that kind of makes sense to me. Like if you really like strength training, you should probably do strength training. If you really like cardio, you should probably do cardio. Like and if your mind works that way, well, then that's the way you should do it. That's kind of what you're saying. Okay. Now these are all, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And just another one would be just having external accountability and support. So sometimes like body doubling is a very common technique for someone who's neurodivergent. So a task can seem very overwhelming. I mean, it's so funny, but sorry, like just doing normal tasks, like cleaning up the kitchen or tidying up after the kids have destroyed the house. It's like, oh my God, it's overwhelming. Then my mom comes up and chats with me and it's done in no time because she's not doing anything. She's just sitting there and I have someone around me and I get so much more done with body doubling. So it is a thing. So sometimes if you're not getting to the budget, you want a budget buddy or a body doubler.
It sounds like that person is almost a distraction. I don't have to focus so much on it because I'm thinking about other things. And as a result, bing, bang, boom, the job gets done. So now let's go back to the big picture for a second here, because you talk about this mind map, which is a very visual thing. So is part of the issue that it's just the numbers that are difficult, or is it something more than that?
Yeah, it can be just the numbers are difficult, or just abstract financial concepts are different. So sometimes you need to turn the abstract concept into a real world example, like stocking up on snacks. Savings is like stocking up on snacks, because if you stock up on snacks, you'll have food later. Oh, right. So if I stock up on money, I'm going to have it later. It might seem odd to an accountant, but yeah, sometimes those concepts are too abstract and you have to bring it into a practical example.
Gotcha.
Imagine debt like a snowball going down a hill.
Yeah.
Do you stop it when it's small, or are you just going to watch it get massive?
Yeah.
Right?
And that's a different way of looking at things. So are there other ways you can cheat, like with apps or fancy technology or something like that? Like you talk about drawing pictures on a paper, but are there other ways to do that as well?
Yep, like a whiteboard or an app called, Canva is more, can be like that as well. There's MindMeister and is it XMind? And then this isn't quite for the mapping, but there's an app called Clio, and it's a chatbot style budgeting app. So it puts it into more real world examples. So it makes it a little bit more easier to make it less abstract. And you can use graphs and pie charts, color coding.
So this sounds like something where AI is going to potentially have a big positive impact on people.
Yeah,
because
but then there's people like me. I actually honestly budget better when I have a pencil and a piece of paper, and on my paydays, I just go through everything. It just keeps me centered and grounded. I know where things are at, and I feel better.
Yeah.
And I actually mentioned that in a budgeting session the other day, and the woman was so grateful. She's like, I'm so glad I have permission to do that, because that works for me, but everyone is telling me to use tech. So you really just have to own what works for you and do that.
Yep. Yeah. And you and I see this all the time. I met with a guy yesterday who's about my age, meaning, he's an old man. And
Right.
he, came into the office to meet with me, and, he had all his stuff, and he knows how to work a computer. We were emailing back and forth. He was able to send me documents and everything. But he said, yeah, it's just easier for me to come in and, sit down with you. And okay, great. Let's do it that way. Whereas for other people, it's like, yeah, no, the computer's way easier. I think where
Right.
AI would potentially help people is, okay, I'm having a bit of a struggle trying to figure out, an approach to this. Well, go on AI and ask it, okay, give me some ideas on this. And, oh, well, you can do this. You can do, oh, okay, great. That gives me some other things to do. But that's the tech side. But obviously the physical side is the exact opposite, but also, perfectly good too. So, you and I have talked about things like the envelope method before and things like that, right?
Right, exactly. And with the brain, research has shown that writing helps with memory, because neurodivergent people do have short-term, especially ADHD, have short-term memory issues. So the act of writing will actually help. So that's why, young or old, sometimes using the pencil and paper can be quite helpful, because it helps with keeping it in your longer term memory, getting into that process. But physical tools like envelope, jar method, a whiteboard. So it's right there in your room and you can just see it as you go by. So yeah, physical tools.
Sticky notes? What about sticky notes?
Sticky notes are always good. I like sticky notes.
And you probably have them in 12 different colors and everything too.
Right.
But again,
make it fun.
Yeah, it makes it fun, but it also makes it visual. And that's really what you're talking about then. So, what role does emotion have to play in all this? Because I'm of the view that none of us have our own independent thoughts. All of your opinions are assigned to you by someone else. It depends on what your friends and your family and what the news media and all the rest of it says. And of course, the news media and social media wants to get us all riled up. And, I'm really mad at that. And, we were 2 years ago, we were mad at that grocery store because they were charging so much money. And now we love that grocery store because they're a Canadian grocery store. So we all have to go to, it's like, okay, people, like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But is there what role does emotion have to play in any of what we're discussing here? Is there a big dopamine response somewhere in this? Like, how does that all factor in?
Right. So yeah, emotions can lead to impulse spending, right? So when you're feeling bad or when you've judged yourself, whether it's because you spent something you shouldn't or you're in financial stress or anything else, when you're feeling bad, you're going to spend more because you need to nurture those emotions. And most people, to nurture their emotions, they're eating more, they're shopping more, they're drinking more, smoking more, going out more, whatever it is that makes them feel better. So emotions can cause that impulse spending. Dopamine can also cause that. So dopamine is that hormone that we have in our body that drives us for our basic survival mechanism. It's what made us seek food, shelter, social connection, right? So, and nowadays with all the scrolling, everything's instant, we get tons of dopamine hits. So that makes us, it helps us escape boredom, right? So having that, we become overwhelmed with too much, how do I say that?
Too much stimulus by the sounds of it.
Right. We're overstimulated. We don't respond to the dopamine as well. So then we need to scroll more. We need to eat more. We need to do everything more. So then that becomes a problem because then we're spending more. We want instant purchases. We want fast food, all that kind of stuff. So how we help with that outside of budgeting would be to do like slow dopamine activities, like a hobby, exercise, having a deep conversation, right? Rather than a text conversation. But for the budgeting style, you want to create a pause before you buy. So if this is not an essential, or I'm masking something as an essential, I'm going to create a 48-hour rule. I'm going to say, I'm not going to buy that. I'm going to wait 48 hours. The other thing you can do is when you have that impulse, and this is where the phone comes in handy because you always have it with you more than a pencil and paper, create an impulse wish list. So instead of buying it, just put it down on a piece of paper and then you could review it later and make a decision. Or you can use cash. I am paying all these bills through my debit account, but for fun stuff, I'm using cash. So then there's that visual when it's over.
I got some other advice here.
Okay.
Everyone should listen to this podcast because what you're talking about is you got to just sort of, calm down a little bit, kind of lower the pressure or whatever. Yeah. So this is my commercial that everybody who's watching right now, just hit all the like buttons and subscribes and all that kind of stuff. Because if you listen to this podcast every week, well, that'll probably bring the pressure down right there. So right. I understand about, I gotta, drink or do crazy stuff. What you're talking about there is also a whole temptation thing then, right? Like that's kind of what drives it. So, okay, how do you reduce the whole temptation thing then? Is it the same stuff that you're talking about?
Right, similar. So a lot of the temptations can be, all the marketing emails that we get. So unsubscribe from all those. You don't need to know that, the Gap or, oh my God, I just dated myself so bad. But you don't need to know.
At least you didn't say Hudson's Bay or Eaton's. That would have been even worse. They're having issues as well. So
funny. But you want to delete your saved payment information from websites.
Ooh.
Make it more inconvenient for you to go online and shop. Right. And just limit your social media scrolling. I know when you're on social media, there's tons of ads and whatnot. Of course, how I do that is I just assume everything is a scam, what I see on social media. So I don't touch it. That's how I prevent myself from getting sucked into the temptation.
Everything is a scam. So you're right. Absolutely right there then. Okay, let's sort of bring this back more to the money aspect of it since we've only got 5 minutes left here. Okay. How can I do all those things in the realm of monies? I mean, are you a big believer in having like different bank accounts to do different things and stuff like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have a few accounts. Separate accounts. So I definitely, and I even color code them. I have my emergency savings in my mind is my red account. It means stop. You cannot spend from this account. It has to be an emergency. And then I have my green account for all of the things that I know are going to come up through the year, like clothing and gifts and stuff, that green savings. And then I have the yellow kind of general where you just dump money while you're trying to figure out what to do with it. And that's my yellow account. So I can spend from there, but I have to think first. Retirement, vacation, where do I want that money to go? So you can set up separate accounts and you can label them. You don't have to color code them. You can say, this is my Bermuda trip account. You want to create something that's fun about it as well to make it easier. Another way to do it is to set up daily or weekly spending limits. Just so that you stay within a limit and you set up a guideline and a rule.
Yeah, and there's a balancing act here. I've had clients in the past who've had 30 different accounts. It's like, okay, that seems like a little bit much to me.
That can be overwhelming.
Right, but I can certainly see what you're saying. I got my, red, orange, and blue accounts or whatever it is. I'm a big believer if you're going to do that, make sure you're at a bank that isn't charging you a service fee on every single account. So,
right.
Go to one of the free banks or the credit union or whatever. Like, you don't want to have to be keeping a minimum of $97,000 in each account so you don't have to pay the $12 a month fee. Go to one of the virtual banks where there are no charges. You can have as many accounts as you want, and then you don't have to worry about that. Right. Now, you talked a bit about putting some friction in when you're buying, so I understand that. And really, you got to step back and pause. So you talked about your 48-hour rule. I guess that's also, I got to put a dollar value on this thing I'm spending, but also make it look like how much time did it take me to earn those dollars? Does that also slow you down?
Yeah, that can be helpful. How many hours did I have to work in order to buy this item? Is it worth it? Like that's, that can be very helpful. That can be a pause. Wait, that's not worth my 4 hours of work. The other things you want to do is, ask yourself, do I need it? Or is this just a want? Or do I have something like this already? Will I still care about this in a month?
Yeah. Don't you hate it when you buy a shirt and you come home and you've already got that shirt because you saw it 3 weeks ago and bought it and forgot, or a year ago or whatever.
Right?
So,
and that happens. You can easily forget.
Yes. Yeah. That's why all my clothes look exactly the same. So the whole dopamine thing is I have to do that behavior to generate the dopamine. I guess if I don't to feel good. So if I don't want the stimulus from that, I guess I got to replace it with something else then. Is that, I get a big charge out of shopping. Well, what can I replace that with then? Like, how do I swap that out?
So you can gamify savings, which means you kind of make it a game. That's where we talk about, okay, that's where you can have a budgeting buddy. Hey, I can save more than you. Or you can say, once I save $1,200, I'm going to take $300 and spend it. Or, so you can create kind of a game in the savings. So that creates that excitement. Otherwise, it's like going to the library. Sorry.
Yeah. And you got to be very careful with that. I think Charlie and I have already done an episode on that exact topic. And that's how they get you. They make it a game. You can turn that to your advantage, though, by also making it a game, but it's a game that benefits you as opposed to
you. Because you're doing it in your own savings account.
Exactly. Yeah. I got you.
And then you can do other things like walking, music, hobbies, a special food treat, anything that makes you feel good. Or once I'm done my budgeting, I'm going to have a piece of chocolate. Once I'm done, that's mine. Once I'm done budgeting, I'm going to watch my favorite show. So you want to kind of build in little rewards. And I think it's really important to mention that you want to budget for guilt-free spending as well. Like, you really need to account for times where you're just going to spend. Like, some people, when they create a budget, they don't have any fun money, right? And I know we're short on time, so I just wanted to jump quickly, like, just to mention, it's also important to budget for energy and mental health needs. So if you're relying on convenience, like takeout or ride shares, you want to budget for it so you don't feel bad later. Because there are days where things might seem overwhelming, especially if someone's dealing with anxiety, not necessarily that's a neurodivergent thing, and you just need to do the rideshare in order to get where you're going. You want to budget for those bad days. You want to budget for when you have executive dysfunction. Like I have a meh account where I just put money in there, and it's for days where I'm like, oh, I'm so tired of just being so practical, so on, and doing everything right and budgeting properly. I just want to go blow some money. So I set up an account so that I can just go out and go blah.
How do you spell meh?
Meh.
Is that like
M-E-H?
M-E-H? Okay.
Well, I can't say what I actually call it.
No, I understand. I'm sure there's a much more inappropriate name for it. But I totally agree with that, you should be able to have some fun in life. So, I'm a big believer that you should make your own coffee, because I did the math and it cost me 15 cents a cup to make my own. And you go to Starbucks or Tim Hortons and it's $2 or $3 or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't go, but I'm told it's a lot more. But there are days when, you know what, I just want to go grab a coffee. I know it costs more than making it myself, but I just, kind of need the mental break. And I think having a separate account for that or a separate fund for that, it's like, you know what, I don't have to worry. I can spend that money on whatever I want. There's only so much there. Once it's gone, I'm done with it. So,
well, and you can use that for the jar method. So I encourage people, like, okay, if you have a grocery budget and it's $500, which is unrealistic probably nowadays, but and you've only spent like $400 or $450, you can take the $50 out and put it in the jar. And whenever you're under budget somewhere, you can take it out and put it in the jar. You can have money associated to take it out and put it in the jar, but then it's visual so that you can take that money and spend it on whatever you want.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And obviously people don't use cash anymore, so that's a trickier method. But okay, I can do it exactly the way you're describing it with my bank accounts. I've got that one account where, hey, I had an extra $20 this month. I'm going to throw it over there. And that way I've got it to use. So, okay, well, we hit a lot of practical advice there, and every single thing we said, I think, applies to every single human being. So even though we use the word neurodiversity in the title, I think all of this advice is like good for absolutely everybody. So are there any final comments you would like to make on any topic whatsoever that we haven't touched on?
I would. Acceptance. It's a very important word. You want to be able to accept where you're at, what you have accomplished, so that you feel less defeated and more motivated. So I think it's important to start small. Start with one thing. And if you're just starting with a budget or trying to adjust something, one or two things, just do that. And whenever you accomplish it, great. And if you have moments where you don't do it, go, okay, that's fine. I'm creating a new habit. I'm just going to go back and try again. So you want to have that acceptance and that grace and compassion for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And I believe, again, in cheating, set a goal that you can actually reach. I remember watching the late, great Norm Macdonald on the David Letterman show. And this was, early in January one year. And Dave says to him, so Norm, you got any New Year's resolutions? And Norm says, I think the problem is people set their goals too high. So one of my resolutions this year is I'm going to get a haircut. And I'm pretty sure I could do that, And the other is I think I'm going to read a book. I think those were his two big resolutions or something. And so I totally agree. My goal is I want to put $20 in my savings account. I want to do this. Like something you can do. You get a few wins under your belt. It makes it easier to win the next time. So
exactly.
Excellent. Well, that is fantastic advice. I mean, I would encourage, everybody who's listening to look at all these tools and look at, how does your brain work and come up with a system that works for your brain. Doesn't matter what Maureen and I think. We're not you. Do something that works for you. I agree with your, concept too that, don't beat yourself up over this. Like, the only time you're ever going to see perfection is when you read a resume. Other than that, we're all flawed human beings. So, by all means, if you've got ideas, put them in the show notes or put them in the comments on YouTube. There's, certainly lots of other resources there. Maureen, thanks very much for explaining this.
Thank you for having me.
And you're coming to us from Canada today. Is that where you are?
Yeah.
There you go. So if you are in the Ottawa or Canada area, Maureen is more than happy to sit down and walk you through the solutions to your debt issues. Thank you very much. Thank you all for listening and watching. Obviously, you know the routine. Like, subscribe, notify, hit the button, all the bells, do all that kind of stuff, because we will be back next week with a new episode. Until next week, for Maureen, I'm Doug Hoyes. Thanks for listening. That was Debt Free in 30.